Hello, welcome to the Myth-Busting Neurodiverse Relationships podcast. I'm Natalie Roberts and I'm here with my co-host Heather Parks. We've both been in our neurodiverse relationships and families for more than 25 years. We met 10 years ago when we were feeling really desperate and trying to solve a lot of issues in our relationship and our families. We've been journeying since then. We've found many more positive and hopeful ways to solve, resolve, repair, reconnect in those relationships and in our families, in our lives. And we now co-host also Loving Difference online, giving hope and a way forward for neurodiverse relationships. In this podcast, though, we're busting the myths about neurodiverse relationships, which we had when we started this journey, that we've realised aren't true, and that actually were preventing us from recovering and having the relationships with our partners and children that we wanted. So we want to dispel these myths and bring you hope that absolutely things can change. So whether you're out and about or comfy with a cuppa, let's dive into our next conversation. See you there.
Hello, Heather here from Loving Difference. Do you recognise that your partner and or your neurodivergent children are in a defensive state? When Natalie and I first came across the term defence mode in relation to our partners and children, it was clear to us that this was a big factor in what we were finding challenging. It made total sense and brought a whole new level of understanding. However, what we weren't so quick to see was how our own defensive patterns were contributing to the situation. This is partly because it is harder to have self-awareness, and we were so focused on looking outside of ourselves for understanding and solutions, rather than inwardly reflecting. It was also because the traditional, better-known fight-flight defence states didn't seem to apply to us. As we began to learn how these and other lesser-known defensive states can present, we began to realise that we too have our defensive patterns, and that these were a big factor in the relational challenges that we were experiencing. In this conversation, we talk about how fight-flight can present in ways that you may not have recognised, as well as discussing the lesser-known states of freeze, fawn and flop. Enjoy.
So I've been challenged, defence modes in 5 minutes. Let's see if we can do it.
Go for it.
Okay, so...
And then why this challenge? Why is this important?
Okay, so why is it important is because when we first started learning more about neurodiversity and neurodivergence, we recognised that our partners were in something that was referred to as defence mode.
Yes, lots to talk about that. And it was all very validating because it was... it all sort of just confirmed our experience. Yes, my partner's defensive. Yes, that's right. Yes, absolutely. Which all sort of took us out of the equation, really, didn't it? It sort of kept it.
Everything's rubbish.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
but then
we realised there were a lot more defence modes than we realised, and that actually, well and truly, we ticked some boxes. So what we realised is that we were all in defence mode.
Yeah.
In fact, there are 6 members of my household, and every single one had their own defensive strategies that were occupying, most of the time. So I think they've become they were 3.
Yes.
And now there's 4 or 5, depending.
I mean, I think most people definitely know fight flight. That is discussed and talked about in all sorts of contexts. So I think that's really well known. And then generally after that, if I ever say to a client or anyone, and what about the others, they just go, well, there isn't any others and I don't do those 2. So they don't recognise themselves in those often. So the other 2,
well, 2 or 3 depending where. So we've got into, someone's came up with the whole F thing, so then it moved into flop, fawn, and freeze were added to the story, and some of them are a bit similar and some of them are
so let's talk about each of them and then just talk about some of the behaviours briefly with them, and then so we can see, well, in what context do I recognise myself? And again, it might be we've got all sorts of reasons as well. I am like that because, and there's a lot of reasons why, but for now it's just about recognizing what you do and if any of these resonate for you. So fight, the classic sort of things around fight, I would be saying that it's very externalized, could be very loud, it could be aggressive or not, it could be passive aggressive is another version of that. Guilty as charged, I think. It could also be resentment, because that's internalized anger. We may have a tendency not to express that a lot and stuff it down. So fight, that's any other ones for fight that you... I mean, it could get physical, there could be some physicality to it, at some level of physicality, even if it's to things or to banging the table or, that kind of slamming the doors, those kinds of things are all that sort of mode.
Yeah, anything that you sort of feel that you're in a heightened state and you're feeling like quite a lot of activation in your system and it involves quite a lot of adrenaline and cortisol and things like that. But that's also flight. So it could you could have a tendency to go more into flight.
Yeah, and flight then, what do you say flight looks like?
Typically that's you just leave the situation. You might storm out. You might combine it with a bit of fight, to be honest. You can have a bit of a stormy out, slam the door, which would, I guess, remove yourself from the situation and fight at the same time.
Yeah. I think that is the sort of traditional defensive description, isn't it, really, of how people are when they're in defense mode or defensive behavior. We were just saying about flight is also, you could be in the situation, not actually leaving the situation, but you are in flight because you are not responding, or you would want to leave, but for whatever reason you are not actually getting up off of your chair or wherever, or where you're standing, and you're not moving. So that's also there, which actually then ties in with another one, but actually if you recognize you would want to leave but you're not, that's actually still a flight.
And I think it's where you're kind of actively stonewalling the other person, because there is a kind of still an activating element to that kind of stuff.
You've sort of flighted the circumstances in a way, haven't you? By just actually not going to talk to you for the next 3 days.
I'm just going to stonewall you. So that's still quite
and then flop, tell me about that one, because that's one I have less familiarity with.
So I think I flop, and sometimes, whether you differentiate between flop and freeze. I mean, freeze, I kind of think flop is when you just go, well, none of that's working. Nothing's working. I'm just going to be. I feel like I've got no energy. I feel like I can't. I'm helpless. I'm hopeless. I'm depressed. I feel tired. I feel all of those things, and it's really
typical. That isn't anything usually you'd associate with that description of defensive, would it?
No, it doesn't. It seems very passive.
Yes,
but actually it is your body trying to go, well, I can't sustain all of that activation, or I don't perceive any of that is working, so I'm just going to go into this victim, small, helpless thing, and actually maybe they'll leave me alone.
I think one of the other things that can happen, I've experienced this with family members, is that the flight or the flop could also look like they just go to sleep. So when the brain has said no more, it could appear to be narcolepsy or some of these other, but actually, or zoning out is another one where somebody actually is just really switched off. They still look like they're listening and they're there, but actually they're either disassociating, or sometimes actually their body just shuts down and goes to sleep.
It's total immobilization. And sometimes I think of that often is like a car when you've got your accelerator on and your brake on at the same time.
Yes.
And it's really exhausting. It's really exhausting.
I've done that. Have you tried? Could this car go if you do that?
It's just going to rev a lot, isn't it? You're not going to move anywhere. So it's you're not moving, but you're burning up. It doesn't look like you are, but you're using up a lot of energy.
Yeah. And then freeze. I recognise that one for me. I think that's sort of the first one that I go into in a lot of triggering or activating situations for me, where I do just sort of stop. It is a bit like rabbit in the headlights type of reaction, which can look different things, but usually it means that my brain sort of stops processing or can't locate an answer, or it just sort of it's almost like a stalling. It's sort of if you think about your car analogy, sort of stalls, and then when it comes back online, it's generally going to fawn. It's going to do the next one. But I think I freeze quite a lot, and just kind of particularly if it's conflict and things, I was like, that kind of mode. Anything else around freeze that we need to say?
I like, I think it is very rabbits in the head, like, isn't it? And often, you know, associated with the dorsal vagal of kind of like, and you often, if people tend to go into that mode, they often have a lot of digestive issues, and you know, so there's often other signs that are going on there. And I think fawn is they call it fawn, but I actually much prefer please or appease. And the fawn just comes from keeping it with these F's. So this is where you don't think the other things are going to work. So you're using actually your social skills.
Well, you know, you can't use the other things. I know from my past story where I learned this strategy more to fawn was because the other things were not okay, allowed, possible.
Or actually it would put you in danger.
Yes, absolutely that. But this strategy also was more likely to get the resolution or the outcome that I needed, which probably to reduce the conflict, feel valued, validated, or something. It would get me some kind of results at the end by doing this more than well, this is my only way I knew how to do it.
And I think for many of us this just started, you know, quite young.
These are messages. Yes, the way that the strategy that we will have, the pattern we will have, which is largely unconscious until we become aware of it, possibly through listening to us talking about it and going, okay, there's some of those are resonating now. Are all from you know, we've created or have this system in place by the time we're 7, probably 14 latest, but that early we have created and developed this system of protection in order to meet our basic needs around belonging, love, value, safety, those things. This is what we do, and we just need to become more aware.
So exactly, often things that we've adopted as children, in an adult world in order to survive and get what we need.
That's what we're now bringing in.
Or it could have happened because of some trauma later in life. So either way.
And so fawning, what behaviours? I mean, it's the one I know, but I feel like I know that one the best for myself.
Well.
So definitely, so sort of self-sabotage, or like abandoning yourself, or betraying your own needs, or sort of pleasing or appeasing, or somebody else's opinion becoming the one we go with, rather than sort of having your own opinion,
because it doesn't feel safe to have that.
Yes, or even to communicate it. Ultimately, that over a long time resulted in me not knowing my opinions, not having a voice, because again, part of my freeze was to not speak. It's almost like mutism, just be mute and not speak. And then I think over time, then because you allow all the other opinions to be the dominant ones, you actually then don't have your own strong or confident opinions to meet everybody else's needs, so to put others' needs before my needs, and then ultimately not know what mine are. And
this can be really
so pleasing.
Typical if you're dealing with people in your homes who are having difficulty with their own regulation, because you're trying to think several stages ahead, aren't you, and to stop them dysregulating. So you become like, okay, so I know that, you know, I don't know, cupboards on or lights on or something is going to trigger a negative reaction. So you learn that's you don't want, and that's going to create discomfort in yourself. And actually what we end up trying to do is trying to eliminate all discomfort in our own bodies, so that we don't have to feel because actually that feels nasty. So we do anything.
I always talk about the story of peas, as in eat green peas, because that was one of the things that it would be a crisis if there were not any in the house. So I can remember there was a time when we ran out, I don't know why, and I literally was like, well, this is a crisis. I mean, it's of all, like, massive proportions.
Obviously,
and I got in a car and I drove 15 minutes to a supermarket to buy peas, to make sure they were in the freezer before Pete got home, so that there wasn't a pea crisis, so that there wasn't the fallout, so there wasn't the defense mode that would come, or the dysregulation, or the tipping of anxiety, you know, that I knew would come because we didn't have peas, that we need to have peas every day. And it sounds a crazy thing now, and it you know, but it was my reality. And the kind of lengths that I went to in order to meet other people's needs, to prevent conflict, to keep other people happy, to try to create harmony in the house. You know,
you're not the only one who's
to
done dashes to supermarkets for that. You're not alone.
I know, no. And so you think this is the kind of stuff where you think, I know this is a bit mad. I know this doesn't really make sense, but I can't not do it. There was no way I couldn't. I could now. I know some better ways, but at the time I had no other tools, no other ways to be in the discomfort of that or to handle that when it happened, because to me it was an inevitability.
And it's exhausting. You're using all of the things activated. You're sort of using your social skills to try and like work out what's going on. You're kind of using your sympathetic, because you're obviously anxious, otherwise you wouldn't be doing this. But you're also kind of like getting into that dorsal defensive state. So it's a bit like break on, right, and
so you can see how they all interweave with each other. And I recognize as well that we will all generally have like a default one. So mine was definitely sort of freeze, please. But then in the absence of those working, or my capacity getting used up, or me being exhausted of the whole thing, I would jump to fight. So I then do some shouting and get really usually cumulative and come out. And then if that wasn't really working, I would need to leave the house or leave the room, but that was sort of because I really felt that wasn't allowed, or I had some stuff about that.
It would have some repercussions.
That was itself would have repercussions, and so how about you? What do you recognize in yourself from what we've described? Which of these F's, which defense mode do you recognize? And maybe like us, you'll recognize it's a combination of many of these and different combinations in different contexts. The important thing is just to have awareness and then compassion for ourselves, to know this information and just know that there is many things we can do about it, to understand it, become aware of it, and to have some different perspectives, techniques, tools to be more regulated and to move ourselves out of our defense mode. And in doing so, we actually create more safety for ourselves and others in our nervous system. And this is what I'm learning from you. And
it's all about safety.
All about safety, internal safety that you translate then into much more external safety, but it's all an inside out process. We often think it's all outside in, that it all needs to be sorted out there, and so we can get it in here, and actually it's the other way around. So we love to teach all of this. We love to share our stories and our wisdom and just what we've been learning about it, so that you can have some different ways. So hopefully you recognize yourself. It's okay that you're in defense mode too. That's the most important thing. It's okay. It's actually all a good thing. We're in it for we are in it because it is stressful,
it's serving a purpose.
It's serving a purpose. But it isn't getting us what we ultimately want, which is well connected, happier, more harmonious relationships, just with ourselves and with our loved ones. So come join us in Loving Difference. Come and find out more somewhere around this video or around the podcast recording. Come and find us. Join us for free and learn some new things from us. And we'll see you along the way.
See you soon.
Bye.
If this episode has resonated with you, subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening or watching to get notifications of future episodes. To dive deeper into all of this with professional coaching, resources and all the support you need, join us in Loving Difference via www.lovingdifference.net, and we'll be back here soon.